Hello and welcome to another Cybercom gaming comparison. This is me, John. Now this marks our 5th gaming comparison and the support has truly been incredible, so thank you so much for coming along this journey. So marking this occasion, we set to pit two iconic and solid franchises together. Both the Tomb Raider and Uncharted series have without a doubt influenced the gaming industry. Where you had Lara Croft, arguably the first 3D rendered female protagonist. She left a mark with 12 main Tomb Raider games, 3 big budget movies, cartoons, books, comics and action figures. And then the main protagonist Nathan Drake in the Uncharted series, which pushed boundaries and most importantly sent shockwaves throughout the game industry, changing forever the idea of what a cinematic video game could be. They both have pushed through extreme circumstances with all odds against them. Both have gone against some really crazy strong, deadly foes and reigned victorious. We love and respect both franchises, but to us, there can only be one. So kicking off this comparison, we'll be looking at a quick overview of each series, head into the gameplay, level design and general atmosphere, then we'll compare the main and supporting characters, before we head into the polls, numbers, reviews, and the legacy each left, to ultimately get us to crown the overall winner. This is Tomb Raider vs Uncharted. There are indeed strong similarities to be drawn between Tomb Raider and Uncharted, a fan rivalry that has sprung up around the two franchises in recent years. When Uncharted Drake's Fortune was announced back in 2006, gamers quickly called it Dude Raider, drawing from its similarity to Tomb Raider games. Well, technically both drew heavy inspiration from Indiana Jones, and that's no secret. But people soon learned that Uncharted was not quite the same as Tomb Raider. There were maybe a few more mechanics, the atmosphere was a bit different, and the main protagonist was a far cry from the world-class gymnast, always landing on her feet, Lara Croft. I've always liked the adventure genre, whether in the cinemas or in video games, and well, in the case of Tomb Raider and Uncharted, I still fondly remember the first Tomb Raider installments on the PlayStation, from hours trying to figure out its impressive puzzles, to battling Jacqueline Natla, that dragon on Tomb Raider 2, aka Marco Bartoli, to dodging that mythological beast, the Taurus Hammer Smash on The Lost Revelation. Some of the subsequent titles before the reboots also stood out to us, for example, Underworld and Legend. Uncharted was a game I personally had to get. This was from the same studio that brought us Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, so the appeal was strong. Back in 2007, I'll never forget the vibrant and believable game world that immersed and how this game encouraged exploration. The graphics was next level, and so was the action sequences. For example, the Nepal train sequence in Uncharted 2. This was unlike anything I've experienced in video games. This comparison is by no means taken lightly. We really had to come together to write and help put this debate to rest, as we're well aware that both spectrums have a passionate fan base, which surely also overlaps. So with that said, this is our attempt to represent and do both some justice. Back in 1993, Core Design was working on a new game, with the goal of introducing more lead female main characters in gaming. This was after Toby Gard, the lead graphic artist at the time, gathered some inspiration from watching his male co-workers playing with female characters in Virtual Fighter. Toby went through a number of designs before the Lara Croft we know and love was born. 3 years after the original concept, Laura Cruz was created, a South American woman, but due to creative differences, the name eventually changed to Lara Croft at Eidos. The publishing company wanted a more UK-friendly name. The first Tomb Raider game was released in 1996, and people loved the game, where Lara Croft embarks on the global quest in a bid to uncover a mysterious artifact said to possess magical powers, known as the Scion. Not only was the title a huge commercial success with over 7 million copies sold worldwide, but people fell in love with Lara Croft. I mean, people literally fell in love with Lara Croft. The game was a 3-dimensional action-adventure unlike anything seen during that time, with 3D platforming gameplay, character abilities, and in particular the player character's ability to interact with free-roam environments. Lara was tough as nails, where she literally took the game from being just an Indiana Jones ripoff to a cult classic. After the first Tomb Raider, we got Tomb Raider 2, where Lara embarked on a global quest to uncover a mysterious artifact said to possess magical powers, known as the Dagger of Zion. Another hit-turn cult classic, the game sold 8 million units and was generally considered superior to the first. After the success of Tomb Raider 2, the developers were keen to rush out the third installment, which sold 6.5 million copies with mostly good reviews. Tomb Raider 3 saw Lara embark on another global quest in a bid to uncover 4 crystalline artifacts said to possess incredible powers, known as the Infighter Stone, Aura Dagger, the Eye of Isis, and Element 115. The last revelation was Lara's bid to uncover the artifact known as the Amulet of Horus. The game was set in Egypt. Chronicles was set after the events of Tomb Raider The Last Revelation, where Lara is presumed dead and buried under the collapse of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Subsequent and fairly traditional sequels and spin-offs followed, which led to the decision to scrap work on the Underworld sequel and pull all efforts towards rebooting the series. Work on this began back in 2009. The foundation was already set, and Tomb Raider already had a great formula. The series was well and truly revitalized with its electrifying 2013 reboot, which was a bold and tight reinvention of Lara Croft's adventure in a modern time capacity. Crystal Dynamics' 2013 Tomb Raider put Lara Croft back to square one, with none of the confidence we'd come to expect from the character. This was a capable yet vulnerable explorer doing the best just to survive, let alone save the world from evil organizations. Well, she eventually ends up doing both. 3 years after, a follow-up sequel, Rise of the Tomb Raider, released, which sent Lara to Syria and Siberia in an attempt to uncover her late father's obsession with the divine source, an artifact believed to grant immortality. The end of the trilogy is concerned about Lara's personal growth, as it is the natural disasters afflicting the places she visits: Mexico, Peru, and the Los Incan city of Paititi, but with some terrific platforming and a host of new mechanics shaking things up. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was intended as the game where Lara becomes the Tomb Raider we all know and love. When Uncharted was introduced in 2006, the industry was having some growing pains. The 7th gen consoles just barely begun, with the 360 roughly being 6 months old and the PlayStation 3, which still was months away from its November launch. The new hardware meant wild upgrades in processing power, giving developers more freedom and newfound abilities to create games with incredible realism. Naughty Dog truly saw this as an opportunity. Their early stage plan was to reinvent the adventure genre. While development went smoothly, there were new challenges upon the team. The cartoon-style visuals of Naughty Dog's previous games, most notably Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, had all been hand-animated. But Uncharted's sophisticated mix of story and gameplay required something else. And for the first time, the studio was getting involved with motion capture and live actors. In 2007, Uncharted hit the ground running and took the gaming world by storm, where you had Nathan Drake, same initials as Naughty Dog by the way, a hybrid of Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider, with refreshing 21st century look and feel. This guy was an action star, just happened to also hunt treasure. With disarming charm, wisecracking jokes, and most importantly, relatable flaws and reactions. The Uncharted series grew increasingly cinematic and immersive, with storylines and thrills that rivaled big summer blockbusters, supported with solid gameplay, which not only was met with general critical acclaim, but also obtained numerous year-end awards and fan praise. Everyone was talking about it. The first Uncharted game, Drake's Fortune, follows Nathan Drake, the supposed descendant of the explorer Sir Francis Drake, as he seeks the lost treasure of El Dorado, with the help of journalist Elena Fisher and mentor Victor Sullivan. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves followed 2 years later and followed Nathan Drake as he travels around the world along with Chloe Frazier and Harry, which is 2 treasure hunting mates, and old friends Elena Fisher and Sully, to find the Sintamani stone, believed to have been hidden in the mythical city Shangri-La, in a race against Siberian mercenaries and the main antagonist Zoran Lazarevic. Drake's Deception released November 2011 and picked up well after the events of the second one, where Nathan and Elena got married, but then separated. Nathan is yet again on the hunt for some treasure, which he and Sully have been looking for ever since they first met: the legendary lost city Iram of the Pillars. Standing in the way is the shady British organization with strong ties to the occult, who's also after the treasure, a leader, a woman called Catherine Marlowe, with a more substantive connection to Drake's past. The story also dives deeper and shows us how Sully met the teenage Drake, who decides to take him as his protege. Nathan and Elena also decides to give the marriage another go. With The Thieves' End, the game is set 3 years after the conclusion of Drake's Deception and follows a now retired Nathan Drake, where he reunites with his long-lost brother Samuel, who's in trouble, and it's only Nate that can help him out, forcing him out of retirement and off on another adventure that involves finding Captain Henry Avery's legendary pirate treasure. When we look at certain comparison points, like the overall gameplay, level design, comparing the older Tomb Raider games to Uncharted is therefore not entirely fair, of course. However, Tomb Raider Underworld and the 3 reboot titles will be possible to compare with the 4 already released Uncharted games, as those games came from approximately the same time periods. Perhaps the most demonstrable differences are in gameplay. In some ways, the games look a bit like each other, such as the way of aiming and throwing grenades. The combat looks like each other, climbing and scrambling usually takes a different approach. In Uncharted, you are mainly looking for coverage, and from coverage, you often deal with a handful of enemies. You often have a choice of different weapons, and if you suffer damage, you can restore your health by staying covered for a while. The game gives you the opportunity to approach some environments in a stealth way, but often it still comes down to head-first approach, when you just shoot the enemies with a lot of noise. Even if you do that a bit sneakier, chances are that you will be seen by enemies and will be quickly attacked. Tomb Raider emphasizes a more cautious approach. The use of bow and arrow is particularly suitable for this. It also pays more in Tomb Raider, Rise and Shadow of the Tomb Raider to silently eliminate your enemies. You do have a shotgun or a gun for example, but the bow and arrow is usually the most obvious weapon. I remember playing Tomb Raider Underworld, which at the time had a lot to offer, but I couldn't help myself comparing the title to Drake's Fortune though, where the game shined through in almost all key areas and gameplay was definitely part of it. It was just more linear and fun. While Lara Croft had the moves in Underworld, it felt less polished and refined in comparison, but surely demanded attention with its difficulty in engaging puzzles. The puzzles in Drake's Fortune hardly caused a sweat. It's quite evidential that Uncharted had some inspiration from the older Tomb Raider titles, and yes, Indiana Jones of course, but we felt that Tomb Raider Reboot definitely learned a lot of things from Uncharted. There's without a doubt a strong resemblance. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves was considered by many to be the greatest title in the series, with some of the best action scenes and a fresh edge to the combat mechanics. The 2013 Tomb Raider title offered very similar mechanics with fun and engaging combat elements which were also more realized. Rise of the Tomb Raider built on this pretty well and refined the gameplay, looking back in comparison to Uncharted 3, which to us was outshined in this aspect. In addition, Tomb Raider rewarded the player for going off the beaten path by offering useful items like weapon parts and coins to purchase extra kits and experience, which would unlock upgrades, fun survival elements which also kept engagement. In addition to a wealth of weapon choices, Lara also gains new equipment like fire, arrows and a grapple axe. But Uncharted 4 Thieves End is a pinnacle achievement for modern video games. The visuals were truly stunning, the locations were lush and vibrant, and the story packs a raw, emotional punch. Not only that, but the welcome additions to the rope mechanic and drivable vehicles, combined with a new emphasis on exploration and stealth-infused gunplay, elevated the game into new, bold and uncharted territory, especially for the series. The Thieves End challenged itself and evolved its gameplay to make the experience feel grander, more inviting and ultimately more rewarding to behold. Even with a consistent and refined gameplay in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, it's still no real match for Uncharted 4, even with Lara's wide range of moves at her disposal. When looking at general level design, well, Tomb Raider was always the front runner. But sometimes there are places that look accessible or objects that should be movable or breakable when in fact they are not. The series is infamous for its bugginess, a consequence for every title being rushed out before it was complete. But invisible walls are bad design. Ledges that look grabbable but aren't are bad design. Any inconsistency in the game logic is bad design. It's nearly impossible to avoid this entirely, but the Tomb Raider games tend to be very bad at establishing the boundaries for what is and what's not possible. Whereas the Uncharted games have kept these problems at a minimum. If an adjacent area is inaccessible, it should look that way, and if you can somersault into a wooden pole several meters away and fling your body from one tiny ledge to another twice your height above a small pile of rubble should pose no problem. Uncharted stick to a linear level design that is well balanced and refined. That said, developers should always be balancing what's worked in the past while also looking forward. Bugginess aside, this is where Tomb Raider shines. It strikes a unique balance between the linear levels of Uncharted and the open worlds for just about every other game. Each level in Tomb Raider is semi-open. There are story-related sections that the player must battle through, but they can backtrack and revisit earlier levels by simply going to a bonfire and fast traveling back to any previous completed level. Revisiting location allows the player to explore the world more thoroughly, which represents an opportunity for developers to add to the canon and include more engaging content in areas that would otherwise be ignored or discarded. The Soviet installation in Rise of the Tomb Raider serves as a hub for not only the story, but can be revisited with tools acquired much later in the game to unlock more of the area, as well as some interesting side quests. Most impressively, Crystal Dynamics is able to tell a linear story in an open world, and the level design is largely responsible for that accomplishment.
All I wanted was to make a difference.
You already have.
Both Tomb Raider and Uncharted, you explore the far corners of the earth. Tomb Raider takes you to Syria, a mysterious Japanese island, Siberia, and much more. Uncharted also takes you to the most exotic locations, South America, Nepal, the Rub al Khali Desert, and much more. At these locations, you search for secrets, treasures, and mysteries. To make the adventure epic, the games from both franchises are full of historic temples, caves, and more. Everything is beautifully designed, certainly in the Nathan Drake Collection Remaster and the Rise of the Tomb Raider. You get almost warm from the desert you walk through, and a shiver goes through your body when you walk in temperatures of well below zero in Siberia. The different temples and historic buildings really gives you the impression that you are in spaces created centuries ago and there are no living soul that's been there for a long time. Both franchises know how to convince in realistic environments. The environments ensure that you really have the idea that you are on an epic quest. Because most of us aren't exactly adventurous, games like Tomb Raider and Uncharted are of course the perfect opportunity to put on the adventure outfit without jeopardizing real life. Both franchises know how to create unforgettable experiences in beautiful environments. Each site Lara explores is beautiful in its own way, with stunning aesthetics and graphics depicting a mixture of scenes. From the Byzantine crypts to the Alaskan wilderness, the areas are both terrifying and serene. This adds to the exploratory feel of the game and the overall adventure that is Tomb Raider. The wide open, majestic wilderness highlights the graphic design in the Rise of the Tomb Raider, which will amaze and add that extra reason to throw yourself into the experience. The sharp graphic designs reflect the perfect attention to detail from developer Square Enix. The feeling changes throughout the game, and the game ends with a roller coaster as you pass through different extremes of the game. From peaceful, quiet and serene hunting to the fast-paced, brutal action that Lara Croft endures. Uncharted 4 brought some of the best levels of any Uncharted game. Take for example the chase in the crane. The fourth installment offered less restrictive level design, which allowed for incredible replayable set pieces, and even parkour segments, which had multiple paths. While this surely makes the game a tad bit easier, puzzling and navigating the wilderness felt empowering. This is balanced out in level design, which is no longer strictly relying on jarring color coding to help guide the player's eye through the maps, thanks to new mechanics like grappling hook and sliding. The fact that players can still easily navigate through the larger maps without a waypoint makes this especially impressive. As we move ahead and look at the main characters, we've got Lara Croft, the young, inexperienced woman who wants to solve mysteries, but at the same time stands her ground. A quick and sharp contrast to the somewhat dissolute, independent and restless Nathan Drake, who is only too happy to get his hands dirty with the danger of his own life. He's sometimes also a slightly too typical hero, who is heroic, but at the same time falls well to the ladies and sometimes makes very cliched comments and jokes. Both have their charms, but Nathan is perhaps a bit more convincing. After all, you have to be a bit crazy if you provide for your living by going on life-threatening journeys. That Nathan is sometimes a bit crazy, you notice all too well when you play the games. The man can always be propped for an adventure to the annoyance of some people. Nevertheless, Lara Croft is of course an icon within the game world. The handsome, handy and adventurous woman is still a figurehead after all these years. In the most recent games, you really sympathize with her as she is particularly convincing. She was the first true adventurer in the video game world, and it's still a pleasure to explore with Lara. In Uncharted, we had Drake, Helena, Chloe, Sully, Roman, Harry, Tenzin and Zoran Lazarevic, which are all iconic and memorable characters that draw you into the story in action. You care about the good guys, feel shafted by the turncoats, and want to see the bad guys get what's coming to them. But who do you remember from the Tomb Raider games besides Lara, Natla, Winston, which is Lara's butler? Chances are you barely, if at all, remember those two reoccurring characters and can recall no one else. Now to look at some polls, numbers and reviews. We're looking at a few polls and the opinions are well and truly divided on this one. Strong support for both the franchises. Now in terms of comparing these two franchises, we've been looking at critical and commercial reception in the form of VG Charts sales data. The numbers are as follows. With Uncharted, the highest critical score in the series is still with Uncharted 2 Among Thieves for the PlayStation 3 at a 9.5 out of 10, and with highest total shipped units sitting firmly with Uncharted 4 with 16.25 million. It's also the best-selling installment of the series. As an entirety, the series has reached 41.7 million units globally. With the Tomb Raider series, the highest critical score is tied with an 8.9 out of 10 for Tomb Raider on the PlayStation 1 and the first entry of the 2013 reboot. For the highest total units shipped, we had to source this data from the video game sales wiki with a reported 11 million units sold for the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot. The series has sold over 58 million copies collectively. Tomb Raider has come a long way over the years, but in many ways it's not so different from its roots. Lara, a true heroine, definitely set the trend and opened up a new era of gaming. She has always been a force of nature, taking on the world alone. In more recent years, the purpose has narrowed to pursuing Trinity, taking him out one soldier at a time with the newfound archery skills. The reboot series truly did the franchise justice, and we almost got to experience Lara in a behind-the-scenes type of way. The experience was totally different to the classic titles, and the modern twist created an unforgettable experience. There is no denying that Tomb Raider is a classic, and Lara has had a significant influence on contemporary titles. Games like Uncharted and Far Cry owe much to Tomb Raider for the great combination of exploration and combat. You can see elements of Lara's adventure in games like Arkham Asylum and The Last of Us. Tomb Raider is one of the most successful franchises in video game history, and Lara's wide appeal is very much the center of that success. But to us, Uncharted isn't just a game, it's truly an experience. Drake's fortune kicked off a long-running series that would tell Nate's story from his rocky childhood to into his latter years. Along the way, we got to know and bond with great supporting characters such as Sully, Sam, and Elena, while all shooting up pirates and jumping out of airplanes. The game offered many unforgettable experiences, such as jet skiing up rivers in Drake's fortune to being encapsulated by the train design level in Uncharted 2, which is still an impressive achievement technically, and that level design could still be praised today. Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception blew us away, especially in the large cruise ship level. Indeed a breathtaking experience, where the hull were breached and large amount of water began to fill the room, the weight which pulled the ship to one side where cars and crates began to slide. Just the level of realism the player could feel created an unforgettable moment. This was truly spectacular. The Gone Home-like epilogue in Uncharted 4 Thieves End was a fitting tribute to an incredible series, which offered great level design, pacing and set pieces. Uncharted made a lasting influence on cinematic games and remained a pinnacle achievement for modern video games. This comparison reminded us again just how amazing both these franchises were and still is today. Both truly inspired modern gaming, but there can only be one. In this comparison, the Uncharted series manages to edge out Tomb Raider. We felt among other key areas that Uncharted's inspiration and influence mainly pulled the reboot, which took the Tomb Raider series and franchise to a new and modern direction. This influence to us helped secure its relevancy of today. But not only that, Uncharted managed to edge Tomb Raider in almost all comparable points, while humbly paying respect to the classics. Those classics that paved the way.
Don't you think you've seen enough?
Thank you for watching this edition of Cybercom Gaming Comparison. I grew up playing the original Tomb Raider games, and to me personally, they'll always be iconic. As you can imagine, this was a very difficult comparison, as we know that both franchises means a lot to a lot of people. But let us know in the comments below and what your thoughts are around everything that was covered in this comparison. We're always keen to get that feedback, and if you've liked this video, please consider sharing it, hitting that like button, and if not already subscribed, please consider subscribing for future uploads. Thank you so much for supporting us and for watching. You guys must have an awesome week. Take care.